data point I wanted to start with is something that we hear a lot about, local businesses and people working in local marketing. We did a survey of small businesses over the summer, and one thing we found was that while a large majority of small business owners use social media for marketing, a large majority also weren't sure what the results were and weren't sure if it was working at all, but they were still doing it anyway. It was an idea that sort of stuck in my head, and I feel like a lot of people in local marketing do a lot of things that they think might be working, but don't really know why or for what reason. And I wonder if you could sort of talk a little bit about how, I guess, some of the mythology in local marketing and how it's actually done. Does that make sense? Maybe Nick? As a sort of domain builder?
Yeah, sure. So I think, the answer to that we see it a lot is people do it, they have no idea if it works, but they can see their, Facebook's a great example. Spend time on Facebook, I constantly update it, no idea if it works, but everybody tells me you should be on Facebook and you should be marketing on Facebook. And I think the hard part for small businesses is there's Facebook, there's Yelp, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Pinterest, and there are just tons and tons of different things. And I think while now most people do it, find the time, I think 2 or 3 years from now it's impossible for a small business to spend 20 hours a day updating social media or everything they're told they should update.
Just to amplify on your question, I think it's not only small businesses who have no idea whether it's working. Big businesses have no idea on a lot of these things if what they're doing in social media is working either. So a lot of it is trial and error, just throwing things against the wall, seeing if it sticks, putting out a campaign. A lot of times you put out a campaign and you're surprised by the results and you get traction. And a lot of times you put a lot of effort into a campaign, nothing happens. So a lot of it is trial and error, and this is all being created in real time. So I think it's hard to know if things work in advance until you get in there, get dirty, make a mess, and that's how you learn.
I believe that the problem is not that they don't know what are they doing. The worst part is they don't know why are they doing that. And the first thing that you need to understand is why are you doing that? In social media and other tools that you mentioned, people think that they are free. Okay, so if you think in terms of return of investment and your investment is zero, so what do you expect to receive in exchange? But social media is not free. It's taking from your time, and your time is money. So social media is very expensive, particularly if you don't know why are you doing that.
And so, if social media, for example, is not necessarily necessary for everybody, are there certain things that everybody has to do for small business marketing, regardless of the vertical? Are there certain areas of it that need to be, anybody starting a business needs to take care of?
Yeah, well, you need to communicate with your audience, whatever audience that is, and you need to find the channels to actually develop that conversation with your customers and with your interest groups and everything. And it may be social, but it also may not be social. There may be, as Claudio says, a specific audience and a specific channel for each local or each business. And I think that the first thing to do is to think about what your audience is, and then determine the right channel and the right strategy, and not just go into social or go into search or go and do a strategy without thinking about it first.
I would say that if you are a solopreneur, if you have a small business, and you ask me what should you focus on, I would say focus on your core competencies, what you know to do. There is a great book, Jim Collins, called From Good to Great. And he said that you take your best people, and you don't put your best people where the biggest problem is, you put the best people where the biggest opportunity is. So if you are the best person in your company, you should take care of the best opportunities and leave the other things to people that know what they're doing in marketing.
Just one other basic thing that all companies probably should be considering is you need to think about what your brand is. and you need to be able to communicate your brand and stand out from your competitors in some way, shape, or form. And I think a website is a very basic way of doing that. These gentlemen can talk to you a lot about what that entails. But so building your brand, standing out from the pack in terms of what your brand and your website is, and then finding ways to acquire customers. Those are sort of 3 core things that every small business, I think, really needs to consider.
And I think, like, amplifying on that, Nick, like, you know, you guys build websites for small businesses. Our website's still important for small businesses. I mean, you know, like, as things go into mobile, and, you know, say if I want to find a restaurant, I would maybe look on Yelp first. I wouldn't necessarily go to the restaurant's webpage. What's the function of a webpage these days?
Yeah, so obviously I would say yes, a website's really important. But I think a website's really important because it's the only place you as an entrepreneur can own, where it's your brand, your voice. You get to tell the story, and it's not controlled by someone else. Yelp's a great example. I go to Yelp, I don't own any of the conversation as an entrepreneur. And that is good and bad. That's why people use Yelp. But as an entrepreneur, I want to make sure I tell my story. And frankly, I think that's the hardest part about this whole conversation is something Laura said, which is having a brand. You know, what does a landscaper know to say to an audience to convince them that he is the best landscaper in X suburb and what makes him unique? And I think that's the hard part. It's the content. It's understanding, you know, who it is you want to be and what you want to communicate.
So, and how do you make the website that front door that you're talking about? I mean, you know, like, if everybody's coming in from the side, how do you sort of funnel them towards your website, I guess?
Yeah, so again, I think it's being true to yourself. So let's use the landscape, for example. So everybody says you got to create lots of content, right? You got to sort of you got to create lots of content. It's great for SEO. If you're a landscaper, you're not going to sit there and write a 500-word post twice a week on, you know, landscaping. So the way to get people to your website is, you know, think about your day-to-day. If you're a landscaper, you've got before and after photos. You can put before and after photos up every single job from your mobile phone, right? The suburb you're in, the address, what you did. And so I think that sort of workflow of being able to do stuff day to day, constantly creating content or stuff that's relevant, testimonials is another great thing. So I would say stop reading books and trying to research all the tricks and think about what you do for a living and say, great, how do I share that with people? If it's visual, you know, take photos. If it isn't, you know, write.
So the website's critical, but the website, you can have the best website in the world, but if all the other things that you do and your brand stands for don't sort of support the beauty of the website, it doesn't matter. In other words, if every time someone calls you, no one picks up the phone, or no one gets back to people, or if the service you provide is not great, and you're not remarkable in some other way, shape, or form, a beautiful website is not going to make your business. So everything has to work in tandem, but certainly the website is an important part.
Yeah, I think that a website right now is something that you cannot afford not to have. Who knows how the world is going to be 20 years from now? But I mean, it's like not having a phone, you know? It's something you actually need to put yourself out there and show yourself to people, communicate what you want to say, what your brand wants to show, what Nick was saying, actually own your space, own your design, own your interaction with your customers. I think websites are still fundamental. I think the most important like overarching tool that can actually help you like establish a presence. I would say that we're going to have
I would say that to unify what you were saying is the website is a unique opportunity to show your identity. In Facebook you're blue, in Yelp you're red. In your website you're the color that you are. So why not do that?
Laura, you know, when we were talking, I believe you told me that there's a revolution happening in domain naming, where .com and .net domains are no longer the only game in town. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and where that's coming from?
Sure. How many people in this room have ever tried to get a .com domain that they were desperately wanting for something and you couldn't get it? All right. So this is a typical response. It's, you know, usually at least half of the room, if not more, have had that issue. And you're not alone. So .com has been sort of the de facto standard in domain naming for 25 plus years. And as a result, there really aren't that many great options left. And so what that meant is that there's a false scarcity in the world of domain names, and big businesses, small businesses, and people, you know, in various industries were really struggling to really build their brand and presence online. So as a result, there was a movement and a variety of sort of, I call it the UN of the internet, but ICANN, which basically is the governance board for the internet, has decided to open up the global internet naming standards. And so now, whereas maybe 3 years ago there were only about 200 plus top-level domain extensions, including .com, .net, .org, and all the different countries, in the last 2 years there are nearly 1,000 new ones. So now when you go on the internet, you're going to start seeing more and more, if you haven't started already, things like .club, .ninja, .guru, .nyc, .co, and all sorts of other ones. And big brands are going to have their own top-level domains. Small companies are going to have new and creative naming options. And so it's a whole new world, and everyone in this room needs to know about it.
I think that Marco Rubio is doing something like that. He has rub.io. So
well, actually, if you paid attention to the news recently, you probably noticed that Google just renamed itself abc.xyz to represent its new Alphabet brand. So when Google makes a movement like that, you know that this is something to pay attention to.
Well, and speaking of Google, what are these new extensions? Are they seen the same way by Google, or I mean, do they have? Is there a preference for .coms or .nets, or how does that work?
I can tell. Well, regarding SEO, that's like a relevant thing here. We've seen like interesting cases of people actually ranking very well on a new TLD versus like established competitors that have been out there for a while. Like one of the most common ones that's like someone that's been very active with .nyc is souvenirs.nyc. He actually ranks like first for the term souvenirs.nyc, and he did that in a like 3 or 4 month term. So Google is actually treating these new extensions fairly well, and there is like enough evidence to suggest that it is like one of the good factors to take into account when you have like a domain name that actually relates to what you're doing. Of course, it has to like have something to do with your brand, product, service, or the way that people find you online. If you're going to have a website about pizza, then if people search for you, searching for pizza NYC, you're probably better off having pizza.nyc than pizza in New York or whatever.com, because it's like very like clear what it's telling you.
Meaning it'll it'll show up better in the search results, or
yeah.
I think just on that comment, I think far too many people overthink the SEO piece. Google's pretty smart. So, you know, if you have a domain name that relates to what you're doing and happens to be a new GTLD, you know, they're going to figure it out, and they know how to sort of go about it. So, as far as that, I would say, if you see a new GTLD that you really like and it's related to what you want, buy it. Keep doing all the things that we talked about. Create content, get active, talk to your customers, and you know, Google will figure out where you should rank in the world.
Gerardo, you only work with .nyc, but have you seen any studies with other city domain names like that? I mean, do people do local marketing differently in different cities?
Well, there have not been so many studies on like how that evolved, because I think we have like not enough data to come up with relevant studies. For example, NYC has been up there for a year, and it takes like a while for people to actually adopt the extension and start using it. The studies that are out there show that local businesses and local ventures and local projects are adopting these new TLDs and are getting like a good identity with these brands, and search is helping them, so it's becoming like a very interesting option for local.
And when you're talking about local marketing, it's very interesting, particularly with the area of your strategy. A few months ago, we went back to Florida. My daughter was graduating in Gainesville, in Florida. And we stay in a very small city close to Gainesville called Micanopy. I opened Yelp, and there were only 2 businesses in Micanopy. And I tried to do something with Open Table, and they sent me to Ocala, that is 20-30 miles away. So the local marketing in Micanopy, it's a completely different business than the local marketing in New York, or the local marketing in Weehawken, or in Rhode Island. You have to have a specific strategy. At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to connect with local people. So you need to understand where those local people in order to connect with them.
And the DNA of each market is absolutely different. Things work in a different way in Miami than they do in New York. There's a different expectation. Things are developed and done at a different pace. People are stimulated by other messages. People feel like a better interaction with another way of communicating your message. So that makes it very important to understand your local market and know what actually ticks and what works and what's like those specific ingredients that make your strategy local. Because you cannot sell to a local market with a global strategy, that just doesn't fit. But it's very important to understand the exact and the specific DNA of your market to be able to do like a local strategy.
That sort of leads to one thing that we often talk about in Street Fight is that it seems so funny that local marketers often talk about local marketing as this sort of grand thing that small businesses are all small businesses and the same rules apply all the way around. But whereas you might do really well if you're a restaurant advertising on Yelp, but if you're a plumber or if you're a salon, there are sort of totally different rules apply. Can you talk a little bit about how the different verticals, how you think about marketing for different verticals, and if you have, say I opened a salon, like how do I figure out what's right for my salon?
Well, as I said in my example of Micanopy, the idea is that your marketing strategy is about connecting your customers with your business. And you need to understand how are your customers searching for a service like yours. So if you're looking for a restaurant, I would say yes, be in Yelp, be in Open Table. If you're a plumber and I have a leak and I have water coming out of my sink, I don't have time to go to Yelp and make reviews and read reviews about plumbers. The first thing that I'm going to do is to go to the fridge and see the sticker that they have there from a plumber that left a week ago. So that's a different strategy. The idea that digital covers everything, it's false and it's digital marketing. So please be aware. You need to understand how are your customers buying. Where are your customers searching for your service? And if they are looking for that in any type of digital, so go there. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
I think the one thing that carries across all the verticals, though, is people want to be, if you delight your customers with the service you provide, if you do something remarkable, whether you're a plumber or a restaurant or a bike store, whatever it is, if you really make an impact and delight your customers, word of mouth will apply across every vertical. And I think that's the one thing in local marketing that is really often not talked about, but so critical. If people really make an impact and are remarkable, they'll get the word of mouth marketing in the local market. It's easy for word to spread in smaller communities.
So that's just be a good business, or what's is the strategy then just be really good at what you do?
That's critical. I mean, that goes without saying, but it's really, I mean, sometimes people can get so focused on the website and the email and the SEO that they forget that the most important thing is to delight your customers. And I think that it warrants reminding people.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is focus. So, we talked about 20 different things you can do. There are 20 social networks and 50 marketplaces you can list your business. And I think most small businesses don't have time for any of that. So if you're going to pick something, pick one or two things and say, great, I'm going to be awesome at this. So if you're a hair salon and you get lots of inspiration on Pinterest, maybe that's the place you sort of double down and spend 2 hours a day sort of building a brand. If you're a phenomenal local business where referrals matter, then maybe you figure out how to sort of get your existing customers to do some of your work, or to go door to door and put your magnet on everybody's fridge. And so I think the biggest mistake we make is we do this all day. So we sit there and say, you should do these 50 things. And most small businesses look at us and say, I don't have time to scratch my ass during the day. I'm going to do these 50 things. So do a few things, just do them really well.
But how can they figure out which are the few things? It's just intuitive? Or Claudio, you advise people on this.
I would say that the way that you choose is answering the question, how is that specific channel going to augment or fit in your strategy? If you cannot answer that question, so you don't use that tool. It means the tools don't define the strategy. The strategy defines the tools that you are going to use.
I think you have to, starting a business is hard enough, like getting like a massive amount of, or a decent amount of customers like coming back to your website store or whatever is like a complicated thing. And at the beginning, I think you come up with a hypothesis, no? You think like, okay, so I'm assuming that people will find me in the magnet in the fridge. And you try it and you test it and you see if it starts like producing results. And I would say that the thing that I've seen the most is that the best way to like stay in business is to iterate like forever. Like try new stuff, see what works. If things work, try to like step on the pedal on that idea, see if that starts working, and then try something new and continue that as a process, like a never-ending process. Because now we see like all the communication channels, tools, discovery, everything like change so much every day that maybe in 5 months we're going to have like a different way of reaching customers, reaching people. So I would say that just like experiment all the time and try to find different ways.
So yeah, there are a lot of things in marketing that are basically out of the small business or any local business's control. One of those is online reviews. We talked about Yelp a little bit. My parents are both doctors, and they each have one Yelp review from one patient who was, the same patient who was upset for waiting too long in their office. But yeah, you go to Yelp, and that sort of defines them. And I think a lot of small businesses find that they get defined by the worst and the best reviews, and often it's just, people don't go to the complaint department if they, have something nice to say necessarily. So how should people deal with online reviews, and do you need to respond to them? And what's a good strategy for that? Necessarily your expertise.
I would say that if you have only one review, that means that not many people is looking at that doctor in Yelp, so I couldn't care less. The issue is that you're supposed to have a voice up there. If you don't have a voice, so somebody else is going to speak for your business. Now, the idea is that you respond, you engage, and basically you have I would say 4 basic sentences. I am sorry, we love you, please forgive me, and the 4th is, oops.
I also think most people are only inspired to write a review if they are madly in love with what you did. I mean, if you did such an amazing job where they're like, oh my God, I will go home and write a review about you. That happens very rarely. But if you piss them off, they're going right to write a review. So if you're just, if you're not doing your best to make people, feel like you just gave them the best service ever, so that you've got a million great reviews to counterbalance that one person here and there who says something bad, then the deck is stacked against you, because no one's going to write anything good, because no one's going to be inspired to write anything good. But the person who you piss off one day, they're going to write. So you're going to have a few bad ones and no really good ones to counteract it. So that goes back to sort of be remarkable. Make sure people want to talk, say positive things about you because you're making such an impact on them. And that will counterbalance the 1 or 2 bad ones.
And I would say that one important thing, if you think that you are doing a good job and you want to receive reviews, ask for reviews. If you don't ask for them, people are not going to give them. If you think that you are doing an amazing job in your restaurant or everywhere else, just leave a small card and say, hey, people love us in X. Please leave a review or tell us how are we doing. Never give a sentence or something like that. But suggest that they leave a review. That's it, ask for reviews, otherwise you're not going to get any.
I was just going to say, I think to your point earlier, if someone writes a bad review and you care, then suck it up and you find out what it's going to take to make them happy. You know, if you are a restaurant on Yelp and somebody writes a bad review and had a bad experience, as a business owner, I sit there and say, okay, I've got to find out what the hell happened. B, I've got to make it right. And I should want to do that anyway. And so I think that's the way, we don't think of a written review online as anything but somebody being sort of pissed off. And if they are, get to the bottom of it. Fix that problem. You know?
Is it the kind of thing that people can't afford not to care about? Like, do people have to care and monitor all those things?
No, again, I think it becomes, it's a relevancy, a relevancy thing. So I would agree, if there's one review for for a doctor on Yelp, you know, who cares? If it's 50 reviews on Yelp and half of them are bad, because you had a meaningful problem, then fix the problem. Because Yelp as a channel for restaurants is huge. So if there was 10 bad reviews on ZocDoc as a doctor, then I would say you should be all over it. So pick your battles, but I would also say, you know, as a business owner, you should want to fix these problems.
And join the conversation. I mean, people sometimes will just like chill out if you answer to their complaints and tell them, okay, send me an email directly, introduce yourself, show them that you are actually listening to them and it's not just like a big wall that they are trying to talk to. I've seen that like as a very successful countermeasure when like people get pissed off and try to take it to social. Just like answer their requests, be there for them, give them an email, give them a phone, give them a call, and that will probably work.
Actually, couldn't agree more. We've had that happen when we launched our own domain extension. We had that happen to us ourselves. We had a lot of negative people who just want to hate on what you're doing, and we found that if you engage the haters in a positive, funny, nice way, where you're not like defensive, you'd be amazed that some turn into your biggest supporters because they just wanted to be heard. And if you hear them and you turn it around and, you know, give them what they were looking for, which is basically, you know, understanding of their issue, sometimes they'll end up being your best supporters.
One of the sort of marketing things that people talk about a lot is this idea that you're going to be, you know, in the future we're going to be walking past Starbucks, maybe even in the present, and your phone lights up with, you know, you're like 20 feet away from Starbucks and your phone lights up and says, you know, 20% off the thing that you bought yesterday that we know you like. How far are we away from that, and how much do local marketers need to think about or worry about or use those kind of technologies?
I think it's a technology that we're ready for technically a long time ago, but it will take time for like the market and people and the culture to adopt. A lot of things are actually viable and out there. Like no one here has Google Glass on. I'm not seeing anyone. It was supposed to be like the super revolution and we would have access to anything all the time. And we were just not ready for that. So we are ready for beacons, we are ready for Bluetooth transmission of things, databases have our information, and I think it's a slow process and we have to like see like trends happen, like early adopters, like cool adopters, people that you want to follow, you want to see these things happening, to see like those adoptions. So from my perspective, I think it's something that we're going to see like in the next 5 years probably, we're going to start seeing like a big impact in those proximity sectors.
A question in regards to a little bit of the SEO, but you talked about like landscapers before, and plumbers, service type businesses versus storefront type businesses. What would your advice be to storefront versus service-based business if the service area is like not where they are locally? I mean, you probably have some businesses that are located in New Jersey, but their service area is in Manhattan. And how does that? How would you structure your marketing plan itself?
Well, I will go back to what I said, that the tools should define your strategy, but the strategy should define the tools. And how can I give an example of that? I'm going frequently to Home Depot. I'm a gadget freak, so whenever I go for a switch, I'm coming back home with a power tool. So I'm not a very good example. But imagine a discussion between me and the person at Home Depot. I said, I understand, hey, what is better, hammer or screwdriver? What is the person going to ask me? What is your project? So I said, I don't care. What is better, hammer or screwdriver? I actually look into all my neighbors' toolboxes, and all of them have hammers and screwdrivers, so perhaps I need one of them. Until I have to say, hey, I need to trim my tree. So you need a saw, you don't need a hammer, you don't need a screwdriver. So if you don't understand what is your project, who are your customers, where are your customers located, that's the first thing that you have to define. And based on that, you select the tools. Now, there is something very important what you said regarding businesses with the front door. And businesses with the front door need to be found in a map, because people are looking them, and the SEO over map is very important in that case. Other businesses, I would say, should also have the websites very well done and be an SEO as part of their service.
I would say that, I mean, in digital, especially, you have like two types of strategy. You can try to respond to searches that people are doing. So if what you're doing is already searched for, then you could try to attack that audience through search, Google, SEO, and SEM patterns, etc. And the second side of this would be, so people are not searching for what you're doing, but you know that you could motivate a crowd to actually go and understand what you're trying to sell. And if that's the other strategy, I would use a different set of tools that would be like Google Display or Facebook. Yeah, you could like actually go and show your message to an audience that is not looking for what you're selling, but that might be interested. And I would try to understand, like Claudio says, okay, so I'm assuming that my customers are searching for something, or I am assuming that my customers are these type of customers, and try to like expose yourself through the tools that are.
And here is a starting point, perhaps. Look at the 2 or 3 main competitors, those that are doing very well. Take a look, what are they doing? If it works for them, perhaps it's working for you. Learn from the others, meaning don't start try and error. Learn from those that are doing well.
Is it prohibitive to get a top-level domain? Is that tough?
You mean the letters right of the dot, like domain space?
Like, I just looked at the list from someone else's question. I see a lot of companies on there like .Microsoft or whatever.
Right.
Can I get a .whatever I want? Is that hard?
So it is technically hard and expensive. It's $185,000 for an application. You also have to demonstrate you have sort of the financial and technical capacity to launch that top-level domain. There are lots and lots of requirements. It was a very rigorous process. The process is actually closed right now for this round. It will likely open again at some point in the future, so if your company is interested, it's something you should start paying attention to, and you should go to the DNA.org website, and that will probably keep you abreast of when that next round would be available. But it's true that probably half of the Fortune 500 applied for their top-level domain, so Apple owns .Apple, IBM.IBM, .City for Citigroup. So this is starting to emerge as a trend, and more you'll see big brands launching on their own top-level domains.
And I would like to ask you something regarding .NYC, because I remember when I bought the .NYC for the Ripley's Museum, I had to show the map that I actually have a business in New York City. Meaning, if I don't have a business in New York, I couldn't buy at that time. Meaning, do you need to show today that you have a business in New York City to buy?
Yeah, for .NYC, you need to prove that you have a New York address and that you are related to that address. So not everyone can buy a .NYC. And that is defined when you apply for the top-level domain, when you try to get the rights to that TLD. You submit like a business plan and a case. And the plan submitted for .NYC required everyone to have a valid New York address. You could also request a TLD and have it just open and sell it to anyone in the world. For example, the guys from .blog are here. They also have a TLD. And it's open for everyone. So if anyone here wants to get a good job, they can do it. Or if anyone in China, in Australia, in South America, wherever, they can just go ahead and buy it. So it's part of the plan that
But on the point that you just raised about .nyc, it's true. To get a .nyc domain name, only New Yorkers can own a .nyc. And I think what's special about that is it's really an exclusive benefit to New Yorkers. Other cities, there are about 30 cities right now that have their own top-level domain. New York's is the fastest growing and the largest, and that's true despite the fact that it's restricted to New Yorkers. But it's really intended to be a benefit, an exclusive benefit to New Yorkers, and the government really was focused on making sure that that was the case. So if any of you have a local business and you want to promote it inside of New York, I think this is just getting started now, and the city of New York is very much behind turning that into the de facto local standard inside of New York.
And it has a very good effect because it actually helps curate the websites that are found on .nyc. It's not going to mean you're not going to find something that is not related to New York or just out of the blue on a .nyc domain name just because it is structured that way.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
I just want to add something because there was a question that wasn't answered is where can you start learning? And you didn't mention that, and I want to mention that. David has a magazine, it's called Street Fight Magazine. And if you want to learn about local marketing, open his website. There's a ton of information for free, and you can actually learn there.
It's actually the best resource of information for local marketing.
Right, but it does have an unfortunate URL, which we're trying to work on. So we picked Street Fight Mag.
But it's a very nice place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now you got a lot of options, so.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much, and please give a hand to our panelists.
Thank you.